more than that, as we toured the jail, the I just was struck by the number of people who looked like me. I just was overwhelmed by the idea that so many Black folks were locked up in this jail, and I didn't know at the time what that meant or how that could be, but it was a thing that stuck with me. And the third thing that really stuck with me was that we were on the tour with some law students who were clerking at large law firms for the summer. And those students, several of the students, not all of them, but several of the students asked the officers to make the people incarcerated fight for their entertainment. And I was just horrified.
We'll discuss race and how it plays a factor and how we didn't even talk about this topic because we were afraid.
A Black executive perspective.
We are coming to you live from the BEP studio for another thought-provoking episode of a Black Executive Perspective podcast, a safe space where we discuss all matters regarding race, culture, and those uncomfortable topics people tend to avoid. I'm your host, TonyTidbit.
And I'm your co-host, Chris P. Reed. We always like to start off by giving a shout out to our partners at Code M Magazine, whose mission is to save the Black family by first saving the Black man. Check them out at CodeMMagazine, 2Ms.com.
Yeah, definitely check them out. And today, check out that today we sit down with Terrica Redfield Ganzy, Executive Director of the Southern Center for Human Rights, to examine why mass incarceration is more than a justice issue. It's a public health crisis. With Georgia locking up more people per capita than any democratic country in the world, Terrica pulls back the curtain on the culture of the violence in prisons, the suppression of truth by state leadership, and the false crime narratives fueling fear instead of reform.
Before we get deep into the episode, let me give you a little bit of background on our guest here. Terrica Redfield Ganzy is the Executive Director of the Southern Center for Human Rights, SCHR, where she leads efforts that transform the criminal legal system through litigation, advocacy, and education. Over her 2 decades at SCHR, she has served as Director of Development, Deputy Director, and the staff attorney for the Capital Litigation Unit, representing clients on death row in both Georgia and Alabama. She also provides training nationally to capital defense attorneys through her work as Death Penalty Resource Counsel with the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. Terrica holds a JD from the University of Virginia School of Law, an LLM in Trial Advocacy from Temple University, and a BA from Tougaloo College. Recognized with the State Bar of Georgia's Commitment to Equality Award and the Excellence in Advocacy Award, Terrica also is deeply engaged in leadership and service across Georgia's legal and nonprofit communities. She lives her mission to justice with both professional excellence and personal commitment. Inspired daily by her family, her heritage, and her resilience to those she serves, we want to welcome Terrica Ganzy to a Black Executive Perspective podcast.
Thank you.
Well, listen, I'll be honest with you. I mean, after all that, I was expecting Chris to also say they gave her land and title. Okay.
Right.
I mean, oh my God, what a great background and all the things that you're doing. I mean, we're definitely excited about diving in and learning more, and just more importantly, of the things that you are helping change that's happening here in America.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So let's get into it. Let me ask you a question. Where are you currently located? And give us a little bit of family history. Where are you guys from?
I am based in Atlanta, Georgia, but I'm originally from Macomb, Mississippi. I grew up on some country dirt roads in a small town in Mississippi, and so I will forever be a Mississippian, but I've been a resident of Georgia for 20 plus years.
Wow. So the crooked, I remember I was a kid, it was an M-I, crooked letter, I, crooked letter, I, humpback, I.
Right.
I mean, that's how, I didn't win the spelling bee, but at least I learned how to spell Mississippi. All right. So welcome, my friend. Listen, Chris, went through your background. You are doing a lot of tremendous things. You're very busy. Your work speaks for itself. There's a commitment that you're bringing to the table every day. You have a family. So you have a lot on your plate. So the question I have for you is, why did you want to come on a Black Executive Perspective podcast, talk about this topic?
Thank you for the question. I was honored to get the invitation because I think one of the most important things we can do is spread information, right? And this is an opportunity for us to talk about the work of the Southern Center for Human Rights, but also talk about what people on the ground are doing to challenge mass incarceration and other challenges within criminal legal systems across the Deep South. So I'm honored to be here to share some information about who we are, what we do, and why it's important that people pay attention.
Well, listen, we're glad you're here too. It's a topic close to our heart. We've done a couple of episodes on mass incarceration. So we definitely happy that you're here to update us and the audience as well. So my friend, you ready to talk about it?
I'm ready to talk about it.
All right, let's talk about it.
So I wanted to start by recognizing something that you said, which reminded me of my grandmother. She was a dirt road disciple as well, you know, coming from the country, and she had a spirit about her. I want to ask you, when did that begin for you, and how did the impact of where you're from and your lineage, parents, grandparents, things like that, shape who you are as a woman today?
So I think the first thing that I would say is that one, I'm proud to have grown up in a really small town in Mississippi. I'm proud of those dirt roads that sometimes the bus would get stuck in the mud when it rained too hard. I'm proud of that because
Right.
I just remember growing up and people sort of cutting paths for me. So I grew up in the kind of country where there was lots of woods, and my dad would take his sling blade, and he would cut through the grass and cut through the trees, and literally cut down trees, so that my brother and I could go and visit our cousins who were right up the path with ease.
Hmm.
And I think about that as a sort of a symbol of things that how my life has unfolded and also what I'm trying to give to others, right? My dad cut a path for me to make it easier for me to move about in our little country area. But that's a symbol of the path that my parents have sort of laid for me um, as I was growing up. Both of my parents were teachers, and I they weren't just teachers; they were true educators who believed in caring and showed me, who demonstrated for me what it looked like to truly care. There's stories of my dad helping some of his students. He was a band director, helping some of his students pick food out of the garden of his students' um, gardens so that they could get done with it quicker, so that they can be at his band practice in the afternoon. I can't count the number of students that he tutored, and students who were not his, and took time off work to take them to colleges and advocate for them to get scholarships. A lot of them were first time college students who wouldn't otherwise have had the opportunity. I remember my mom combing little girls' hair so that they didn't get teased in school, or a specific story one year when some students who had been tracked into what they called at the time of special education programs, but who were being integrated into her classroom. And she just decided, please just leave these students in my classroom and I'll educate them as best possible. And by the end of that term, she had not only gotten a lot of those students up to grade level, but some of them were testing at above grade level. And that kind of dedication showed me that what it means to care deeply. And I often talk about the influence of my grandmother, who didn't have a formal education. She had to drop out of school and work to help her mom and sister and brother on the farm when her dad was sentenced to prison for murder. She worked most of her life as a maid, sometimes carrying loads of laundry on her back down those dirt roads. But she was one of the first people to register to vote in Liberty, Mississippi, at a time when doing so could have meant death for her and or her family. And so I think about the courage that it took for her to stand up, but also the level of self-worth that she carried with her despite not having the fancy titles or the fancy education. She knew her worth, and she was willing to take a risk to make her life better, but also to make the lives of her grandchildren's better, and to demand the dignity that she deserved. And so I come from a family of people who cared, and who reached up and who reached back. And I hope to carry forward that legacy, and be an example for my own children. I have two boys who are looking to me as well. And I hope that the legacy that my parents are leaving for me, I can also leave to my children.
It's time to rethink your protein. AgileLab's protein bars are crafted with high-quality protein, double the leucine, and enriched branched-chain amino acids, essential for optimal muscle recovery. Finally, a protein bar that works as hard as you do. So visit agilelabs.com and use the code BEP to get 20% off. That's agilelabs.com, promo code BEP.
Wow. Well, number one, thanks for sharing that. And, family is everything. And a lot of times we forget, or I don't want to say we forget, but we don't recognize today in terms of what our family did for us to get to where we are today, right? And a lot of, especially today, unfortunately, where that history is not even, I don't want to say being erased, but it's not being looked at. And more importantly, looked at it at the lens of not just today, but what people did to help us get to where we are today, right? And none of us on this show would be where we are today if it wasn't for your parents and your grandparents and Chris's parents and my parents and our neighbors and all the people that sacrifice, for us to be here. And so the question I have for you've had a lot of experiences that helped shape your life. When you were in college, you were able to visit Cook County Jail. Can you talk a little bit how that moment, kind of crystallized your understanding of race and justice in America?
Sure. I was a rising senior at Tougaloo College in Mississippi, which is right north of Jackson, Mississippi. A small, historically Black college. There were a little over 800 students in the whole college when I was there. And I was drawn to Tougaloo because of its legacy and history as being one of the hubs for the civil rights movement in Mississippi. And I wanted to be a part of that legacy. The summer before my senior year, I was able to secure a summer research fellowship at the American Bar Foundation in Chicago. And I was paired with a person who was researching, I think the topic concerned the Cook County people who who wanted to be police officers, the police academy. They studied who those people were, why they were coming to that career. And one of the things that stuck out to me was the level of trauma that a lot of the people who were in the police academy had experienced, and what they were taking that trauma to the job of being a police officer and what the implications might be there. But as part of the program, we were able to meet with judges, and it was for students who were students of color or from minority backgrounds. And so they made sure that we could see judges who were doing the work in action. We got to tour the public defender's office and the prosecutor's office, but it was the tour of the Cook County Jail that really, I think, set me on the path that I'm on today. And that was because it was my first tour of a jail in my life. I'd never been inside of a jail. And when I was on the tour, I felt it's hard for me to describe how I felt, but I felt like I was an intruder, right? There was I was there were people in cages instead of animals, and so I felt out of place and like I shouldn't have been there because the people who were incarcerated couldn't tell me to look away. Um, and so I felt like I was invading people's privacy, and I didn't feel comfortable with that. But more than that, as we toured the jail, the I just was struck by the number of people who looked like me. I just was overwhelmed by the idea that so many Black folks were locked up in this jail, and I didn't know at the time what that meant or how that could be, but it was a thing that stuck with me. And the third thing that really stuck with me was that we were on the tour with some law students who were clerking at large law firms for the summer. And those students, several of the students, not all of them, but several of the students asked the officers to make the people incarcerated fight for their entertainment. And I was just horrified.
Wait a minute, stop. Hold on one second. I just want to make sure I heard what I heard. So, just so I'm clear here. So, several of the people that were with you
Yes.
asked the officers to make a couple of the inmates fight like a dog fight for their entertainment. Is that what I'm hearing?
Gladiator, yes, and multiple times.
Like on Django.
It wasn't just a one-time joke. It was several times on the tour. They asked the officers to stage a fight for their entertainment, and I just was horrified by the inhumanity in that request. One, because they're people, right? Just because they're in prison in jail doesn't mean that their lives are worthless. So many of the folks who are in there might have been in there because they couldn't afford not to be, right? They couldn't afford to pay bail to get out.
The bail and stuff like exactly.
Or folks who would be acquitted or have the charges dropped, or no matter what they were in there for, they were human beings first and foremost. And the idea that just because they were locked up made them disposable, I just couldn't wrap my mind around. And then I was disturbed by the power because, for better or worse, in our society, lawyers carry some, weight or some cachet in our communities. And these students were going to be future lawyers and with that comes some level of power in their community. And I was just so disturbed by the idea that folks who would be leading companies or leading law firms and things like that could have this perspective about people, people who they didn't know, but also people who they just decided to dismiss. And so I took all of that with me to law school. I couldn't get it out of my head. And the more I just wanted to learn more and more about the criminal legal system, and the more I learned, the angrier I became. I just was outraged at the racism.
So not to just jump in. So what did you learn about the criminal justice system?
Well, I started to understand that the criminal legal system is built on a foundation of racism. That people with means don't get the punishment, right? Wealthy people, particularly with the death penalty, they don't execute people who are wealthy. It just doesn't happen. And so it sort of takes that theme of certain people count and other people don't, is what I've started to learn. And I just couldn't, I couldn't get that out of my head. And I decided that I wanted to do death penalty defense of all things. It wasn't something that I woke up, or even as a kid dreamed that I would be doing. I never would have thought so. But my path sort of led me in that direction, and I don't regret it.
You talked about when you were a kid, or not, that wasn't something you thought of as a kid. You talked about your mom fighting for equity, and you talked about your dad, promoting and tutoring and things of that nature, children. How did you escape the family business of being an educator? mean, you're doing it in a similar kind of adjacent way, but
In a way,
how did
he's
you
still
escape
doing
that?
it. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. But how did you? How was that conversation? Usually, when people have a family dynamic, it's a tough conversation with their parents to say, "I don't want to take over the
Right.
business."
Well, I actually thought I wanted to be a teacher for a long time.
Okay. Okay.
And then I realized that I don't have the patience that it takes
Gotcha.
to
Yeah.
to manage students' children all the time. So I knew that wasn't. I figured that out pretty early that wasn't going to be the path for me. And then the truth of the matter is, I was smart, and like smart girl from a small town. There are a few things that you thought that you could do. You could be a lawyer, you could be a doctor, you could be, I don't know, scientist or something like that. And so I hadn't had a whole lot of exposure to other opportunities. And so I went to college sort of thinking medical school or something like that. Or I was going to be a PhD, get a PhD and teach on a college level English because that was my favorite thing. And I got to Tougaloo and realized I didn't want to do lab and class. So I X'd off being going to medical school from the list of things that I could do. Then I realized that a PhD took 6 years, but a law degree took 3. So PhD sort of went to the background, and the truth of the matter is, I was influenced and inspired by the Thurgood Marshalls and the Constance Baker Motleys of the world, and wanted to sort of walk walk down that path. I have always been interested in social justice. Even before I knew it was called social justice, I was the person who was in high school doing the canned food drives, right? I was the person who was always sort of looking to help people. And what I knew about the law is that it was a tool to get justice for communities. And so I decided I was going to law school.
When
Wow.
you pick this up, and you started to learn and educate yourself, you specifically stated that the more you learned, the more it elicited an emotion within you. And so, what particularly about the South made you want to defend those incarcerated in the South, in the southern states? Did you think there was a disparity in how the law was provided to those folks, or was it just demographics?
Well, the South is my home. And so when I
Yes, sir.
talk to
Okay.
people, I often tell them I am a descendant of those who chose to stay and fight, right? Because, sometimes there's a narrative about Black folks who stayed in the
Yeah.
South as, oh, they must be so
Yeah.
docile and that kind of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So,
The docile, huh?
yeah,
I know who made. I'm from the people who made that narrative. Right. I'm from the people who made.
I'll be honest with you. I
created
never
that
heard of
narrative.
that. To be honest, I
Oh,
never
yeah, I
heard of
have.
it, but
good.
I haven't. But you know what? I can see people saying, I never, to be honest, I never heard that. I'm from, Detroit, Michigan originally. So I never heard of people who stayed in the South for docile. But I can get it. I get it. Go ahead, Terrica.
A picture of,
Yeah, I get it.
oppressive
I get it.
place. Why would you stay? You must just accept it. And
Right.
and
Absolutely.
so what, but I think that sort of diminishes the tradition of people who lost their lives when, right?
Yep. Yep.
The folks who decided this is my home too, and I
Yep.
will stay here and die for it if
Yep.
necessary. And
Yep.
so when I think about like my connection to the South, like it is my home, and I'm willing to. One, I love it. Right, I love sweet tea, like for real sweet tea, not that cold stuff that you add stuff to. I love sweet tea. I love the fact that, even today you can ride by people down the road, and people, if they're sitting on the porch, they wave at you because that's what we do. And I
That is
Right.
true though. That is fair.
That's
That
love
is true.
that.
right.
And so I
Right.
love those things about where I grew up. But I also am not blind to the fact that it has been a very oppressive place for people like me. And
Mhm.
I am just choosing to use my talents and my skills and whatever to do something about that. And but I also want to like correct the narrative that oppression only happens in the South, right? Because
Well, it
I
does.
think I
Yeah.
told I can't remember who I told, but I told somebody, I was talking to somebody about this, and I said, honestly, there is no safe place for a Black person in this country. There absolutely isn't, right? And we
No.
can go down the line of the number of people who've been killed by police, and all of those people didn't happen all in the South, right? Um, but I'm choosing the South because it is personal to me. I have brothers who are in the South. One of my brothers, I remember years and years ago, he was young, driving a nice car, had a little blue Camaro, I think it was, and he said that he getting stopped by the police is like going to Walmart for him. It's just something that you do in your week, right? And that's awful.
Right.
That's awful.
That is horrible. That's horrible.
Right. And so I mean, it's really personal to me, the work that we're doing here, because I too have sons that I worry about related to this justice system. Not because I think that they're going to do something, whatever, that gets them connected to it, but because I know that there is no safe place.
Right.
They can be as smart as possible or as kind as possible, and that does not keep them safe from the criminal legal system. And I want to change that for them. I want to change it not just for my own children, but for my grandchildren, but for everybody else's kids too. And I think about, I mean, sometimes I shudder, really. I shudder at the thought of my sons getting locked up in Fulton County Jail, for example. And I shudder not just for them, but I also shudder for everybody else, for all the other mamas and all the other daddies who worry about that, but also, and particularly the folks who are experiencing it.
Right, right. Let me ask you this. I got two questions for you here. Number one, I want to dive into what work I want you to start talking about the work the Southern Christian Human you guys are doing at SCHR. But the first question I want you to answer, let's just back up a little bit. Hey, I came from two educators. I love English. I could have went, and got a PhD, or I could have, I could have been a doctor. But you chose a path. To be fair, there's not an easy path, okay? Especially when you're talking about, death sentence, getting those overturned, and all those things. You're dealing with nothing but negativity. And it's like the big elephant or the big boulder that, is like this, and you're trying to push back, right? And put a dent or try to get a little crack in this huge boulder we've been dealing with for centuries, right? So speak a little bit about, did anybody, when you first said, hey, after you decided PhD is 6 years, law school is 3, I'm going that way. However, I want to focus on criminal justice and death penalty. Did anybody say, hey, Terrica, chill. Why don't you do something else, right? Because this right here takes a lot of work, a lot of energy, okay? And to be fair, you may not see a lot of positive results, okay? Because there's more negativity, more things being thrown versus the things that you overturn. Talk a little bit about that, and then dovetail into the work that you do at SEER.
So yes, the answer to your question is yes. I remember when I decided that I wanted to do the death penalty work, I had actually had a job offer at a large law firm in Mississippi, and I did not want to do that. I knew that was just not going to be the right move for me. It didn't sit well in my spirit. They were wonderful and fine. That wasn't where my heart was. And I remember telling my parents that I was going to take a job making $30,000 out of law school.
Oh my God.
Having gone to a top 10 law school in the country. And my parents they did not understand because, it did not compute. We didn't know a lot of lawyers, right? And so we knew it was like, seemed like they were well-to-do and things like that. And so I remember my mom specifically saying, Terrica, She said, Terrica, when you have to pay your tuition, can you pay it with love? Can you pay it with passion? No, it takes MONEY. You can't help anybody when you broke. She was not really,
She wasn't sugarcoating it, right? Yeah.
but and I heard, and the truth of the matter, it was a hard decision for me because I was the first lawyer in my family, still am. And like I said, what we thought we knew of lawyers were they were well to do, and I don't know where this comes from, but I had this want to give back to my family, right? I had all sorts of opportunities growing up and going to college and doing very well and that kind of thing. And I wanted to be able to pay that forward. But it was only so much I was going to be able to do on $30,000. And so it was hard. I cried because it felt selfish of me to choose the work that I was choosing, knowing that I wasn't going to be able to have the income that would allow me to do more to support family members. But I remember talking to a professor, a woman who was a justice on the Maine Supreme Court. And I asked her about her career and how she got to where she was. And she said that she talked to me about working at legal aid in her early part of her career and sort of just loving what she did and moving up the ranks to where she was. And I told her about my dilemma. And one of the things she said was, Terrica, if you do what you love, you will do it well and everything else will come. And I believed her because I could see it in her, right? And so, but I also acknowledge that I get one life to live and I don't want to choose to be miserable at any stage of it, right? And so I was intent on choosing work that I would find fulfilling and meaningful and leaving a legacy that I could look back on and smile, right? That my kids could be proud of. And so, yeah, there were some plain pasta evenings and some, I was on a $1 a day meal plan for a second. But throughout all of that, I never sort of wavered in the decision that I made for myself. And I said earlier that I came to the work in anger, but I stayed in the work for love. So I took the $30,000 a year fellowship, and then I got a job. I got the job here at the Southern Center for Human Rights. And I chose the Southern Center because it was the place to be if you wanted to do death penalty defense. All of the biggest named people in the field came through the Southern Center. Brian Stevenson got his start at the Southern Center. Stephen Bright was a legend in the death penalty field. And I wanted to learn from people like that. And so it was really an honor that they offered me the job at the Southern Center. And, I just built relationships over time with folks that I have been representing. And it's those relationships that make me the most proud in the work that we do, or the work that I have done. Just being able to hear from somebody. I remember I was representing this person who was on death row, and I had gone to court and was having a hard time. The judge was mean to me. I remember visiting my client after that, and he was outraged. I thought he was outraged at me, but he was outraged. He was outraged at the judge. He's like, Terrica, he was mean to you. And I thought to myself, this man is on death row, right? They are trying to kill him, and he's worried about me, right? Because so those kinds of relationships that have meant something, to be able to hear from one of my clients wrote to me, or he called me actually. We talked on the phone, and he said, Terrica, all the changes that I'm making in my life, I'm making because you believed in me. And it's like, oh my gosh, wow, right? Because I didn't come there to change him, really. I came to do a good job as his lawyer, and we develop a relationship in the process. And so I think, I stay for that, for those moments where maybe the win is not like the win at the Supreme Court, United States Supreme Court. We have won multiple cases at the United States Supreme Court, but sometimes the win is being a friend to people who have needed a friend. Sometimes the win is like holding somebody's hand when they needed somebody to hold their hand. Yeah, sometimes the win is just those relationships. And so, I am still drawn to this work for those reasons, but I'm also drawn to the work because of the people I get to work with. Like, it's really amazing to be able to do work with people who are like-minded, right? Like, who stand in a similar purpose for their lives and careers, and who I respect and have a lot of admiration for. I remember when Black Lives Matter first became a thing. And, it was messing up people's workplaces because they were having all kinds of arguments. And I was like, oh, it's such a privilege to work in a place where I don't have to have that argument at all. They just get it, right? They just get it. And so it's things like that that sort of keep me at the Southern Center. And so you asked me about some of the things that we do. We say that we work for equality, dignity, and justice for people impacted by criminal legal systems in the Deep South. And for us, that fits within several buckets: challenging the criminalization of poverty, challenging mass incarceration, challenging the death penalty, and challenging racism in the administration of justice. And we have seen a lot, and we've grown a lot. We're almost 50 years old. So next year will be our 50th anniversary. And, there's been a lot of cultural change, but also we've grown in terms of the kinds of work that we do. We started a resentencing project, what we call Project Freedom, about 10 years ago this year, actually. And we have been able to help people secure their freedom, almost 100 people now. And that started the project started because we realized that 100% of the people in Georgia who were serving life without parole sentences or extreme sentences for minor drug offenses were Black. We thought,
Let's hold on, stop a second. I just want to make sure I heard what I heard again. I'm sorry, my sister, but I got to jump in here.
Uh-huh.
So I heard life without parole.
Yes, that's what you heard.
For minor drug offenses.
Yes.
If you like what you hear and want to join us on this journey of making uncomfortable conversations comfortable, please subscribe to a Black Executive Perspective podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Hit subscribe now to stay connected for more episodes that challenge, inspire, and lead the change.
Life without parole.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Awful.
How do you get there? I mean, I'll let you finish, but that life without parole, not for murder, okay, or rape, or for a minor drug offense.
Yes. Well, we get there because Georgia outdid some other states. We had a 2-structure outlaw as opposed to 3.
So 3, not 3 strikes, 2 strikes.
Yes. So what was happening was that there were folks who actually had drug problems, right? They would get caught with a minor little bit of drugs, but then they would get the 2 strikes, and then
and you just lock them up and throw them away.
They're done. Mm-hmm. And so we were able to start this project by really trying to figure out who all these folks were and going to them and saying, hey, we're willing to try to help you. We're not sure if there's anything we can do, but we'll do the best we can. And we have had good success because what we've been able to show for those cases in particular is that the sentence might have been legal, but it's not just. A lot of those folks wouldn't even go to prison in this day and time if they were convicted.
Today, especially if it's marijuana, right? Because a lot of states have made marijuana legal.
Mm-hmm. So we were able to successfully just start taking those cases one by one, finding them and trying to do our best to get folks out. And sometimes judges would thank us. They would say, thank you for the opportunity for us to get this right. Sometimes prosecutors would really be engaged in trying to make this right, or at least better. But we started out with drug sentences, and then over time we realized that this expands way past drugs, right? There are a number of other kinds of cases where we were able to show to the court that these sentences were extreme and that the person could be and should be released. So that's just one bucket of some of the things that we do. We sue prisons and jails. That's one of the pillars of the things that we do. We go in, we monitor, we try to figure out what's happening. A lot of people write to us and say, hey, this is what's happening with my daughter, my brother, etc. And if we see patterns, we will start investigating to figure out if there's anything that we can do. We have sued Georgia prisons, I don't know how many times. And what we keep running up against, I think, is a culture of apathy and dehumanization, which sort of keeps this cycle of us having to sue to get changes on repeat. And so that is a big thing that we do, but we do try to hold folks accountable for treating people in their care with dignity and respect. And sometimes we find I would say the weirdest, but the most awful, I'm using the word awful a lot, the most concerning kinds of things, some things that you couldn't even imagine. So for example, we do court watching. We go across the state and we just sit in courtrooms and look, we observe. And that's how sometimes we get class action cases, because we notice a pattern. So for example, we're down in South Georgia watching court, and we realized that there were children coming to court pleading guilty to crimes without ever having talked to a defense attorney. They just didn't have anybody for them to talk to. So we sued, and we were able to get that. Yes.
But doesn't the judge, so hold on a second, doesn't the judge automatically say, hey, we're going to give you a public defender, we're going to do this and that because you have nobody to represent you?
The Miranda rights.
In theory.
I mean, isn't that, I watch Law and Order, right?
Oh my God.
You know,
I stayed at a Holiday Inn.
But I thought every judge, if somebody didn't have somebody to represent them at an arraignment, right? I thought the judge would automatically say, get them a public defender to represent them.
So this is what I'm trying to tell you. There are things that happen in our courtrooms that you would not believe, right?
That's insane. So they're just locking kids up. Kids coming in with nobody, no representatives, and they're just saying guilty, and the judge takes that case? Isn't that? I mean, I don't get it.
Well, that's why we had to sue, and that's why it was fixed, because it was awful and it was wrong. But yeah, it had we not been there, it would have continued to go on and on and on, because nobody was raising the red flag, right? We saw another case where this woman who had been abused, and she called 911. She called 911, and by the time, the case gets ready to go to trial, she decided she didn't want to prosecute. Well, in that particular county, they were fining victims of abuse for calling 911 and then deciding not to prosecute. So if you change your mind, they would give you a fine. And if you couldn't pay the fine, they would threaten to put you in jail. Right. Like, what?
So this is just a shakedown. they either you're going to give up some money or you're going to jail.
I'm leaving here with something.
The idea was that where you're using resources from the the county when you call and then you don't prosecute, but it doesn't take into account what actually happens in domestic abusive relationships, right? It takes a long time for folks to leave, and sometimes when you leave, it's the most dangerous part of the relationship, right? So it was very very callous way of handling those kinds of cases, and it was the kind of thing that we couldn't have made up. Like my mind, if I were Shonda Rhimes, I couldn't have thought of that kind of carelessness within the justice system. And so those are the kinds of things that we find, and when we find those kinds of things, sometimes all it takes is a letter. We write a letter saying, hey, here are all the ways that you are behaving unconstitutionally. Please fix them. And sometimes that works, right? Sometimes it's like, oh, thank you. This is what we're going to do here. Can we talk to you about how we need to address it, etc.? But sometimes people fight, and it has to be more of a litigious situation. But I can go on and on talking about some of the stories. I think the bottom line is that we are in the business of holding officials accountable for their behavior, for protecting folks who are in their custody, but we're also in the business of sort of helping to tear down systems that are oppressive, and trying to think about ways that we can build up ways to hold each other accountable that focus on restoration more so than punishment. And how do I say this? I think we often run up against this idea we run up against a poverty of vision, is what I call it, where we keep doing the same old thing and expecting to get different results, right? We lock up all the Black people and all of a sudden crime is going to disappear. We tried that, it doesn't work, right? And there's often this narrative that punishment is the only thing that can work. And we don't have the courage to think or to try something different. So I think what we're hopeful to do is to help give folks courage, help set the table for us to vision a new way to engage with each other, and to build a system of accountability and community that involves community and that lifts up community as opposed to oppresses it.
Let me ask you a two-part question. One of them is about you from a personal perspective. I know one of the great stories of many teachers that I've been exposed to in the past is they have students that return and they've seen the fruits of their labor. And so even though we cast your mom as the person that said, you're not going to be able to make it off love, have you had conversations with her where you guys have kind of crossed the same threshold when it relates to people coming back and you've affected their lives and been able to have those type of conversations? Did you ever have those type of conversations with your mom to say, hey, similar to your old students, obviously you were her best student, but some of the students that I've been able to touch, or some of the people I've been able to touch from a relationship perspective, have come back and fed back into me? Because your mom wasn't doing that teacher thing for the money. Trust me. I know teachers. She wasn't balling.
No.
Right. She wasn't balling.
Trust me,
but
I know.
Does she understand it better when you create that nexus point? Right. Did she understand it better when that nexus point was established?
She did. I mean, both my parents they're so proud of me. They're like, oh, you're just like Angela.
Of course they are. Yeah. Exactly.
They just love it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Flat out.
But at the time they didn't understand, right? And so,
Right.
Absolutely. But I want to lead the people with that, as opposed to them thinking your parents is still, cutting you out the wheel because you.
No, so here's the thing,
though.
We do keep it real, right? It is a thing that my parents did not understand. Honestly, I'm not sure that I really understood. I just knew that I did not want to do a particular kind of work, and that my heart was in a particular space. My parents were trying to look out for me, right? Like they
There's no question.
Right. But yeah, they are absolutely my biggest fans, and are so proud of the choices that I have made. And we laugh about We laugh about that moment a lot because I do tell this story a lot, and it's not to like make my mom look weird. It's just to understand
Look,
like we are real human
Yeah,
beings.
absolutely. She want the
yeah.
best for you.
If I was
Yeah.
your father, I'd have said the same thing. Are you crazy? 30K? Are you kidding me? You
Right.
know how much you paid to
Right.
go to law? You kidding me?
Right.
We've been
Right.
fighting
Absolutely.
flat out. That's a normal reaction, to be fair.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right. That's
Absolutely.
right. But
You know,
it's like
go
I
ahead.
think about it, like some of the work that we do. Sometimes it takes a little moment for people to get where we're trying to go.
Mhm.
Not everybody understands where we're coming from when we say we don't support the death penalty, right? It takes time. I
Mhm.
remember I was walking out of the prison after visiting a couple clients, and there was an officer who was riding around in a truck or whatever. He saw me. He was like, "Sis, can I talk to you?" And I said, "Sure, I guess, whatever." He was like, "I see you in that visiting room, and you're smiling, and you're laughing with folks." And I think to myself, doesn't she know they're monsters? And it shocked me, right? But he was being honest in that moment that he
Mhm.
could not make the connection, right? He was like, "This looks like a nice little
Mhm.
lady. How is she having this kind of relationship with folks that to him were less than human?" And so we were able to have. I mean, like I couldn't convince him in that moment because I didn't know what the right words were. But I hope that I planted a seed with him in that conversation that he would take with him as he's continuing to think about like what his how he envision I mean how he thinks about people who were on death row, etc. And I just think about that in terms of life generally. Sometimes the right thing is not the evident thing. Sometimes it takes us a minute
Mhm.
to get to a place where where we can change and evolve and to grow in understanding. And so um, I like to give people that grace. And because so many people gave me grace. Some of the things that I believed when I was 22, I'm embarrassed by now. So
I think we're all that way a little bit, right? If we're reflective, okay. So if we take a step back and I always call it marinate, right? You take a step back and you just marinate and you just say, you know what? I remember I did this and I did that, or I thought this way, or I thought that way. Life is a part of evolving, but also it's a part of taking a step back and looking, and then this way you won't be so judgmental, because at the end of the day, we all said something. We all thought one way. We all did this. That's all human beings. But then eventually a light bulb went out, or that seed that you were talking about earlier that somebody made throw at us. Well, we wasn't ready for it to fertilize, right? But then all of a sudden it germinated, and we were like, oh, I understand what Terrica was talking about. Oh, I understand what Chris. So I just think that's just part of life, and that's why I've tried to learn. I've learned to never say never, and then number two, to give people grace. To your point, because we all fall short, and to be honest, we've all fallen short, and we will continue to be.
For you though, with the stakes being so high,
mhm.
how does that not weigh you down, especially, let's just keep it real, as a black woman in a field that may not be predominantly set up for women? Like, the good thing is, what your parents being teachers are allowed to express a certain degree of apathy and consideration, but you're in the law, and you're in the law in a field that's not dominated by you, and you're sometimes one of one. And how do you stay motivated and dedicated to the cause when you swimming upstream for the majority of your career, maybe, or even recently you've been finding yourself like, man, if I was somebody else, this wouldn't take all this, or that type of deal.
You see her face change, bro? She's like,
Yeah, I
oh,
did, I did.
she's like, he hit a vein,
He absolutely did. The number
hit
of
a vein.
times I have asked myself this question: seriously, would you be talking to me like this if I were a white man and
Right,
that kind of thing? I remember when I first
right.
graduated, when I first decided that I wanted to do death penalty work. Another black woman attorney who was doing this work said to me, "Terrica, you sure you want to do this? It's pretty cliquish and it's overwhelmingly white." Um, and you might not have a lot of community. And I was like, yep, still interested, still gonna do it, that kind of thing. And she became my mentor in the space, and I remember calling her crying. I remember calling her crying because I had been working in North Carolina and had visited one of our clients on a Saturday. And I got pulled into the the sheriff or whoever the person was over the jail. I went to visit. I got pulled into this space, and there was an interrogation. It's like, somebody says that you're not a real lawyer, and I was like, what do you mean? Why are we even having this conversation? Well, let me see. I was like, you see my bar card? Well, somebody said you might just made that up on your computer, and I was like, okay.
So a black woman, we make up
Of
stuff
course,
like that,
absolutely,
right?
absolutely. Why not? Why not?
There are a number of different ways where you could verify this thing, right?
I mean, flat out.
Right.
And I asked the questions. It was a black woman who was having this conversation with me, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"So do you do this to the white lawyers?" And so I was young at the time, like fresh out of law school, but I was working with some other young white folks, and trust me, I was suited and booted. I had a
Mm-hmm.
turtleneck.
Yeah, you looked the part, the whole 9
I
yards,
even had,
right?
I had
Flat out.
like
Flat out.
I
Flat
was
out. But you went on a computer to create. Stop.
And so my colleagues would go in shorts or whatever else anyway, and they never ever questioned
Never question them.
to be lawyers, etc., or whether I came in, I was going to the prison to find a boyfriend. I
Boyfriend,
just
yes.
was. I cried.
You were going to the prison to find a boyfriend.
They thought
You
they.
kidding
She was
me?
hunting.
Alex,
This degree to hunt.
You were going to the prison to find a boyfriend.
Yeah.
yes.
So the outside world wasn't good enough.
Nope.
No, so it was so offensive in so many ways. And so when I raised the issue of race, it was like, oh, don't play the race card. And I was like, no, you played the race card when you locked me
Exactly.
in the space and interrogated me in this particular way that you don't do to any other person that I have seen come in this jail. Anyway, they dropped it and went on about my business, but that stuck with me. It hurt me so much. Like I cried for weeks because it just was so awful. But anyway, my mentor has said to me, Terrica, unfortunately, this happens. And one thing, what you shouldn't do is be discouraged by it. What you can do is be motivated by it. You walking into a courtroom or in all of these spaces, you will be underestimated, and that's their first mistake. I said, yes, that's their first and biggest mistake. And so you asked me how I sort of deal with it. It's like I think about the women who've had it even worse, like a lot harder than I've had it, who made it possible that I could have it as easy as I do, even though it's hard. I think about those folks and I remember that we can do hard things. We shouldn't have to. But I think about them and I think maybe the way that I manage in this situation will make it easier for somebody else to deal with later. But it's awful, and I have some other friends who are in other kinds of positions where we get together and we talk, and it's nice to be able to have a community of folks who get it, right?
Exactly.
Who are not going to say, "Oh my God, here she is."
Right.
Who actually understand what it feels like when you are underestimated or you're disrespected in a way that it's clear that it will be different if our gender or our race was different. But also who can boost you up. So sometimes I send a text to my friends and I'm just like, hey sis, you're beautiful, right? You're amazing. Maybe nobody told you that this week, but I'm telling you today.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Because that's the kind of support we need. And so, I think one of the things I do is sometimes, I call it out, right? I ask people some questions. And if they can't answer, then, that is the answer, right?
Right.
The other, the thing I do, I know a lot of people are saying, like, Black folks shouldn't have the burden of educating people, and that is very, very true. But I also, for my own sake, don't want you to keep doing the same thing that's making me
Right.
angry and being hurtful.
Right.
So sometimes I do take on that burden. Yeah, and it's a privilege, right? It's a privilege for the person if I am in the mood or feel good enough about them to educate them, right? Because I could just let you go out in this world and be ridiculous. But if I care about you at all, right, then I'm going to want you to be better because that's what I would want you to do for me. I would want you to pull me to the side and say, Terrica, when you said this or when you did this, this is how it landed for me. I don't know what your intentions were and I don't care that much, but I'm telling you how it felt to me. And so I try to do that too. Not all the time, but enough that for the folks that I have to constantly interact with, etc. I want them to be better for my sake, but also for theirs.
Listen, sometimes, and I'm throwing this at Chris. Chris, sometimes, there's an angel that is born, and when that star comes up, there you can see their purpose, and that purpose just shines over and over again. And I don't want to say I hate to say it, but I think we have this angel right here on our show today. I mean, the love that she has and the demeanor, to be honest, and not afraid of the hard stuff, and showcasing nothing but love, and not just in your words, just but in your spirit and the energy that you have and how you come across. And so I can definitely see when you were young and you decided this was a path you wanted to go. That had more to do with your destiny, God, putting something in you. And at the end of the day, people can come at you and say, you should do this or you should do that, or 30K, are you kidding me? But when you're born with a purpose and you find out what that purpose is, nobody can deter you from it. And more importantly, you thrive in it. And regardless of all the things that's thrown at you, you learn how to navigate, but more importantly, that purpose is shining, my sister. So I am so excited that you came on this show today. And to be fair, I'm gonna be honest with you, Chris knows. I mean, we had 1,000 other things we wanted to chat with you about. All right. But you told us what we needed to hear today. Okay. And not only that, I'm just, the knowledge that you have dropped here in terms of what's going on in Georgia, and more importantly, the work that your organization is doing to shine a light, to hold them accountable, all right, is fantastic. So what I want to come to you right now is final thoughts. You've already fed us a lot, but, give us some dessert here, okay? What do you want to leave the audience for final thoughts?
I think I would love it if people got curious. I would love it if people got more curious about what is true and what's a false narrative related to criminal justice. I would love it if folks were curious about what is happening in the courtrooms around them. I would love it if folks took time to imagine a system of accountability that's different than what we have right now. What would that look like? Just sit with that for a moment, right? And allow ourselves to use our big brains to to try to start thinking about a world that we can build that is restorative. So that's what I think I would leave folks with. I mean, because that is the biggest hurdle I think that we see in our work, is that we can't imagine how we can lead with love and compassion and build a world that is safe for our children and our children's children.
That's you said so much and made me think about so many strong people and definitely strong black women in my life. Just reflectively, because of your humility and because of your trajectory and your story, it's been very inspirational for me, and I appreciate you coming on and sharing that, and you had some vulnerable smiles throughout this time. But let me ask you, how can a Black Executive Perspective podcast help you? Is there anything we could do to help encourage or support or promote this gospel that you're for the path that you're on?
Yes. So I think one of the things you're doing is you're doing it right now. You've allowed me to come on and let people hear about the work that we're doing. If folks are interested, I would love for folks to visit our website, www.schr.org, where they can learn more. They can hear stories and see video and learn more about the work that we're doing. We also, if the folks are in Georgia and specifically the Atlanta area, we have a Justice Watch program where we are inviting community to go in courts with us and sit and observe and help us take notes and learn about what's happening in the courtrooms, but also be the eyes and ears for the people who are not there. So there are plenty of opportunities for folks to be engaged, and we hope that they will pay attention to the Southern Center, hear this podcast, and want to learn more.
Well, thank you, my sister. And we're definitely going to put that up on our website and on this episode as well. But back to what Chris was saying, I mean, very strong Black woman. I know your parents are proud. I know your children are proud of their mother, okay, in terms of what you bring to the table on a daily basis. And I can speak for Chris in this. We are also proud of you, Terrica, because the bottom line is what you're doing and how you're doing it with grace, and it's just beautiful, my sister. And so anything that we can do, we would love to have you come back on, have you tell us about your progress. We can dive in deeper on things that you want to promote and you want the outside world to know more about. So just always know that you have carte blanche here on a Black Executive Perspective podcast.
Thank you.
So I think it's now time for
Tony's Tidbit.
So the tidbit today. Justice isn't measured by how many people we punish. It's measured by how many lives we restore. True freedom is not defined by the laws we write, but by the humanity we choose to protect. If our systems strip people of their dignity, silence their stories, and profit from their pain, then we haven't achieved justice. We've institutionalized oppression. Real justice begins when we replace punishment with restoration, fear with imagination, and laws with love. And you heard a lot of that from Terrica Redfield Ganzy today.
Absolutely. So before we get out of here, we like to always close by reminding you to tune in to Need to Know with Nasinga. Each week, Dr. Nasinga Burton provides poignant and positive, insightful information for our audience here on the Black Executive Perspective podcast. Make sure you check out Dr. Burton, where she can give you the game as she sees fit. And it is a great time every week, so you don't want to miss it.
Absolutely. And don't forget to check out our next Pull Up, Speak Up. Our roundtable dives into the most provocative topics that are happening today, unfiltered voices, sharp perspectives, real talk, call to action. You do not want to miss Pull Up, Speak Up here on a Black Executive Perspective podcast.
And then we also like to remind you to incorporate our call to action, which is LESS. Our goal here is to eliminate all forms of discrimination, and to achieve this, we ask that everybody embrace less. And the L is for learn. Educate yourself on racial and cultural nuances, and also learn to have an activist stubbornness like this young lady had today, so you can tap into your anointment. There is something that you are built for, and she has absolutely made that clear, that she learned what she was built for and she would not be deterred.
Absolutely. And then after you learn, you have the letter E, which stands for empathy. Now, since you've learned, now you can be more empathetic to people that you know, because now you can put yourself in their shoes.
And then the first S stands for share. You know, you want to share and enlighten others. You don't want to hide it. You want to divide it. You want to create coalitions that can be cathartic, like reaching out to your friends and just telling them that they're great and making sure you generate a smile. You want to share the things that you have that are positive, so that way you can spread that level of positivity.
Absolutely. And the final S stands for stop. You want to actively to stop discrimination as it walks in your path. So if Aunt Jenny or Uncle Joe says something that's inappropriate at the Sunday dinner table, you say, Aunt Jenny, Uncle Joe, we don't believe that, we don't say that, and you stop it right there. So if everyone can incorporate less, LESS, we'll build a more fair, more understanding world, and we all will see the change that we want to see, because less will become more.
We appreciate you for tuning into this episode. Check out our previous episode. Make sure you check out future episodes and the other platforms that we talked about, but also make sure you put on your notifications so you can check us out when we're live. You can communicate and collaborate with us in the comments, and we can have a good conversation back and forth, and we'd love that. But go to our website, sign up for our newsletter, leave us reviews, let us know what you'd like to hear about, and subscribe wherever you listen to us. Where can they find us, Tony?
My friend, you can find the Black Executive Perspective podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And please follow us on our social handles of LinkedIn, X, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram at A Black Exec. For our fabulous guest, Terrica Redfield Ganzy, we want to thank her for appearing on the Black Executive Perspective podcast. For the co-host with the most, my boy down in Dallas, Chris P. Reed, I'm TonyTidbit. We talked about it. We learned about it. We laughed about it. We're going to keep striving and thriving about it. We love you. And guess what? We're out.
A Black Executive Perspective.